The NFL is now into the postseason as we get you set for a wild card weekend. Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the NFL. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Paul Chapman. And Paul, we've got 6 games on tap starting Saturday. We'll touch on 4 of them here today, and got to start with the Buffalo Bills. Of course, what an incredible season for Josh Allen and the Bills. They're going up against the upstart Broncos, who I think a lot of people are talking about them right now because of their young rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, who has had a strong first season in the National Football League. It's going to be the crafty veteran against the young upstart here, but the Bills, big favorites going to this one, as they should be. What do the Broncos need to do to give themselves a chance to maybe come away with a big upset here?
Well, let's throw out last week for a start. I think if you look at, obviously, the Broncos had to win to get in the playoffs, but the Chiefs basically laid out the red carpet for them. But prior to that, they'd lost 3 in a row. So I think you have to, obviously that was a bit of a correction for them in terms of confidence, but you have to wonder if they can hang with the Bills. I think if they can, it's down to coaching. It's Sean Payton and how he runs that defense. That defense is pretty good. Now, Joe Burrow carved it up the week before. Burrow and Allen, both elite quarterbacks. So I think if you're the Bills, you're happy enough to think that your offense can go toe-to-toe with that defense. But overall, it's a rookie quarterback with Bo Nix. But let's not forget, he's an older rookie. It wasn't like Jaden Daniels. He came out, he transferred a couple times, had a ton of experience. So he has looked very good. He's especially with a deep ball. Buffalo needs to watch their secondary, and they need a pass rush. If they do that, I think they'll be okay, because I think Allen's going to handle that defense well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one for sure. Sticking with the AFC, we've got the Ravens and Steelers in an AFC North divisional matchup here. The Lamar Jackson, of course, the other MVP candidate, right alongside there with Josh Allen, has had another remarkable year. Feels like you'd give him the MVP any year if you really wanted to. But it's going to be an interesting battle here, because it's always a tight one when you've got 2 teams in the same division. I know the Ravens are almost 10-point favorites in this one, but do you expect it maybe to be closer than the spread currently indicates?
No, I don't. And that's because I just look at the Steelers. They had a super soft cupcake schedule getting to 10 wins. Russell Wilson was a revelation for them. They've lost 4 in a row going into the playoffs. And if you look at how one of those losses was to the Ravens, they could have lost the other game to the Ravens, where if not for a 2-point conversion. I admire everything Mike Tomlin does to get his team ready and get them in the playoffs and have a winning record every year. They're not an elite defense anymore. TJ Watt shut out last week against the Bengals, not even a single tackle. Not to say he's not a great player, he is. These two teams very familiar with each other, rivalries, turnovers. Yeah, I wouldn't say the Steelers have no shot, but ultimately I look at the way Lamar is playing and I look at the way Russell Wilson is playing, and I don't think the Steelers have a chance.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for sure. All right, let's jump over to the NFC and kick things off with the Packers and Eagles. Of course, Jalen Hurts has been out with that concussion, also dealing with a finger injury, but he is slated to practice this week and still questionable for the game, but ultimately it looks like he's going to play. And of course, Saquon Barkley did not participate in Week 18 as the Eagles decided to rest him, despite him being on track there to break the NFL rushing yards for regular season mark. But it's going to be 2 interesting teams here that at times have definitely looked like world beaters, but the Packers, of course, definitely coming in maybe looking a little bit less so. How do you break this one down?
Yeah, you go back to last year, the Packers made the playoffs and no one thought they were going to do anything, and they go into Dallas and absolutely destroy the Cowboys. Cowboys still haven't recovered. I think there's a possibility of that happening again. Comes down to coaching a lot in the playoffs. I think a lot more of Matt LaFleur as a coach than I do of Nick Sirianni. We do have to look at Hurts. I think he will play, but he hasn't played for several weeks now. So I'm not going to suggest that he's rusty, but you're coming off a concussion. You definitely could make you tentative. I think they'll lean very heavily on Saquon Barkley. That has to be the game plan for the Eagles. Look, they've still got the best offensive line in the league. They've still got a very tough defense. But I give the Packers a real shot in this one. I think if we look at the pedigree of what they did in the playoffs last year, that was some very talented players. And Jordan Love looked totally not in awe of the playoff moment at all. So I think the Packers have a shot. Eagles probably win, but I think this is going to be the best game of the weekend.
Lastly, on Monday night, we've got the Vikings taking on the Rams to wrap up Wild Card Weekend. And I would say for most of the year, Sam Darnold definitely was talked about quite a bit favorably by Vikings fans. But maybe after Week 18, there's a little bit of hesitancy now heading into the playoffs, as he did not look great in that big game against the Lions. Do you have any concerns based off of what you saw a week ago?
Absolutely. The narrative going into last week was, okay, this game is for all the marbles. And yeah, it was in Detroit, but Detroit are beat up, right? They don't have David Montgomery. Their defense is a mess all over the place. Brian Flores, this defensive pit bull who creates schemes that no one can figure out. The Lions just brushed them off their shoulder. And I think, should they win this, then they have to go back to Detroit. And if you look at the NFC, if not the Eagles, who else would you say is a good fit to take on the Lions? I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings go on the road and beat the Rams, but psychologically that had to do so much to them. We have the narrative still of the Lions, and Matthew Stafford going to the Rams, and obviously they won a Super Bowl with that. But I think the Rams are a very average team. They suffered through some injuries earlier on in the year. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Vikings win this. But I think when you look at a championship pedigree, there was untold damage done to the Vikings last week in terms of how easy it was for Detroit to not only handle a supposed elite defense, but also look like they didn't really miss all the parts that they were missing.
Yeah, maybe the confidence was a little bit shaken after that loss to the Detroit Lions, but we'll see how it all shakes out. We'll be back next week to break everything down that we saw for Wildcard Weekend. For Paul Chapman, I'm Rob Wong. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and we'll talk to you next week.